The legal conflict over the Ethereum-based privacy tool Tornado Cash has illuminated a policy impasse that's been building for quite some time, and it's raised novel, technical, and legal questions. Why does that matter? Please welcome Peter van Valkenburg, Director of Research at Coin Center, to the stage.
Thanks, everyone. It really is a miraculous day when the weather is better here than in Southern California. So thanks for spending some time indoors with us. Is there some issue with the slides? Oh, great. Fantastic. All my concerns have been allayed. So I'm Peter van Valkenburg. I'm the Director of Research at Coin Center. And thank you for having me here today. I've been working in this space for 10 years, as long as Coin Center has existed. We're a nonprofit research and advocacy group that's dedicated to explaining how these technologies work to policymakers, educating them, researching areas where there are hard questions in public policy, and then advocating for our preferred public policy solutions before Congress, before the agencies, basically whoever's got questions. And there's always a lot of questions, right? I'm trying to decide what I like here. This is good. So forgive me, I do have some written remarks, and the reason why will become perhaps worryingly clear in a moment, because when Mike Ockert of Project Glitch invited me to talk, he told me how he was thinking of framing today's event. He wanted it to be about communication, or maybe more aptly, miscommunication, about how the assumptions that we've all made, regulators assuming things about technologists, technologists assuming things about regulators, the predispositions we come to, the questions with, and the imprecise statements that we've all from time to time made, how all of that together has led us to where we are today, where we don't actually understand each other very well anymore. And because of that lack of understanding, we fight. We fight over privacy. We fight more specifically over the Tornado Cash sanctions. My organization, Coin Center, is suing the Treasury over those sanctions. And we fight over criminal liability for the developers of Tornado Cash. So, in the spirit of less fighting and finding more ways to communicate, and also in the spirit of my typical evenings these days, now that I have two very adorable but mischievous little ones. Thank you. This morning was a struggle. I've decided to eschew a bunch of statutory and constitutional exegesis and instead tell a silly story. A parable about Clearville, the land of glass houses. For as long as anyone could think of, the town of Clearville had only one building material to speak of: glass. Cars made of glass, shops, stores, and halls. Why, even the homes had glass roofs and glass walls. Now, the glass of Clearville was unusually strong, so nobody worried about glass built too long, or breaks, shattered bits, or cuts from the shards. They only did worry about looks from their yards. See, the townsfolk of Clearville were very polite. They knew they were watched from morning through night. They also were a bit dull, an entire town in a creative lull, because people who are always watched seldom do anything worth watching. They're just too afraid to be judged for the things they might be botching. But one day, a stranger came to town in a terrifically tall truck of instant renown. The size of the truck was one for the books, but even stranger was its very new looks. The truck wasn't made of glass, not at all. It was positively opaque, a monstrous wall. And once they got to thinking about it, even more alarming was because of the truck's sheer opacity, no one could see what might be inside its capacity. They'd soon find out. For the stranger went by the name of Shade, and Shade had one goal: sell shades and get paid. Curtains, blinds, even frosted glass. And sell them he did, right from his truck. He sold the lot to the last. You see, the Clearvillians were pretty darn sick of always looking over their shoulders, even in the relative privacy of their glass people holders. A few said, well, I've nothing to hide. But even those folks admitted that a curtain or two in the bathroom was good for their pride. Soon, every house in Clearville was positively swathed with shades. And Shade didn't only have strange wares to sell, he had some tall tales to tell. He talked of his friends back in the land of unclear. There was paint, wood, and stone, even vinyl veneer. Now, markets, science, and trends tend to move faster than the state comprehends, so it was with a shock that the mayor of Clearville awoke one morning to a dark, dark room. "The sun's gone out," he said with a start. "Oh no, it's just that wall that the neighbors curtained in part." But Mayor Clear's morning was about to get worse. Still not out of bed, he heard Clearvillians chanting in verse. Peeking out of his windows, he saw them outside. They'd come to complain from near, far, and wide. Not about Shade, but of other intrusions. From the chief of police, Constable I, and his inapt conclusions, it seems that I had been bothering them all, banging on doors whenever he'd call. This was something new to the town. It was once the case that I would simply walk by and, well, spy, to be sure that nothing so sly was going on in the houses of Clearville. But now, well, now he had no way to tell what trouble's afoot. All that glass was as see-through as soot. He had particular suspicions about houses 2, 6, and 9, of whose inhabitants there wasn't a sign. Were they in there? How many? And what were they doing? He swore when he listened he'd heard improper cooing. Yes, I was near certain that behind a red curtain the folks in House 9 were paying for favors sublime. "My eye," said Mayor Clear. "I trust you, I do, and forgive me my sneer, but you can't just barge into a house that's suspicious. You've got to have evidence your hunch is propitious." "I've a better plan, sir," I said with a stir. "We'll simply go raid the truck of that despicable Shade." So to Shade's truck they went, to learn of the curtains he lent to houses 9, 6, and 2, to charge him with crimes of the rest of that crew. "I just gave them some shade," he said, "for the money I made. Just what they might do, even inside of my view, was none of my business or trade." "So you saw what they did, and it's that which you hid. What a very fine tale. Now we'll take you to jail, and of this troublesome truck we'll be rid." And that, my friends, is the end of our Clearville charade. Gone was the source of the infamous Shade. Pay you no mind to the many loose ends. Like what of the new materials from all of Shade's friends? Should they sell in Clearville? I guess it depends. And what of the Clearvillians still fully ensconced in velvet velour Shade already had launched? Are they allowed to keep drawing those blinds? No, or maybe, or yes, but only if they've no crimes in their minds. So Clearville is, perhaps obviously, Bitcoin. It could also be Ethereum, because Ethereum inherited the entirely transparent ledger quality of Bitcoin's original design. And the lesson here is that Bitcoin's blockchain was not originally fully transparent because it was desired to be fully transparent. It was but one step in a necessary technological evolution. And what I'm saying is we should not assume that the particular transparency of an existing technology is inherently a moral or ethical imperative. It could very well be a mere accident or a temporary technical limitation, like the glass houses of Clearville. people will continue to change Bitcoin and build new networks that are more private. It's not a holy relic. Now, Shade is Tornado Cash. Sorry, I got my slides here. Or really, Tornado Cash's developers, right? Tornado Cash is the bolts of fabric that people can put up in their glass houses. And what I want to communicate here, hopefully not miscommunicate, is that we should not assume that the inventors of incremental improvements are inherently doing something wrong, especially in the absence of their clear intent to assist known criminals. And nor should we assume that these inventors are one-offs or frauds. Sure, they might be misfits in the Steve Jobs sense, but they can't be ignored. In many ways, this technology is inevitable. If not Tornado Cash, then there are countless other projects and potential protocols which will continually improve, bringing privacy not just to Ethereum, but to Bitcoin as well. Indeed, probably to ultimately all financial transactions globally. Now, there's an ambiguity in the story that you might have noticed. Shade might be only selling curtains, but he might have also installed them himself in houses 2, 6, and 9. He might have even seen the inhabitants of those houses committing crimes, and yet he installed the curtains anyway. And so the question here is, at what point is someone doing more than sharing tools for general usage? At what point are they conspiring to further some crime by providing those tools? If they've no personal interaction with those potential criminal users beyond publishing a smart contract and a website that criminals, along with others, use, are they culpable? If they're not culpable at that point, then are they culpable if they continue to update the software on the website after it's become apparent that some of the users may be committing crimes? When should Shade have stopped installing the curtains? When he noticed some funny business happening in the back room? When he was told explicitly that they wanted these curtains to hide criminal activity? Should he demand identification and a criminal background check before installing curtains in a person's home? Another question: what fraction of users must be suspected criminals before the service is effectively a de facto criminal service, and its mere continued provision or maintenance is prima facie evidence of a criminal conspiracy? So, a reasonable estimate suggests that SWIFT may facilitate the movement of approximately $2.8 trillion in illicit funds each year. That's far more than Tornado Cash. In absolute terms, it's less than Tornado Cash as far as the illicit fractions share relative to total flows. My question is simply, should we pick a number? Should we pick a percentage? And finally, is there something special about money or about money laundering that makes it different from my parable? We don't obligate home security installers to actively identify and report evidence of their customers' crimes. We don't hold the developers of encrypted messaging platforms, typically, though that may be changing, responsible for their users' crimes. Is money special? Why? And then, what of our story's very unsatisfying ending? I'm no Dr. Seuss. The one with all the loose ends. Shade is in jail. His truck is impounded. What good does this do anyone? Even if we arrest and incarcerate the inventors of these tools, the tools and ideas will remain in the world. They cannot be uninvented. And they can only be universally confiscated through extreme tactics and the invasion of many persons' rights. Can we ever get Clearville back? In this manner, the story is actually far less extreme than reality. It would take only a handful of Constable I's deputies and a few big night raids to pull all the red curtains down and return the town to its prior transparency. But with the digital realm, tools are infinitely replicable. They're copied, they're shared, they're spread, they're made now, thanks to blockchains, immutable. You can decide what that means, but definitely hard to remove. It is likely a fool's errand to try and forbid anyone from using privacy tools online. Also, I see Amin in the audience. I think he might be the source of this shirt. Also, can we or should we ban the legitimate uses of these tools alongside their criminal uses? I think no. I think it's very good that we, Coin Center, can be supported anonymously, if people wish to support us anonymously, through Tornado Cash. It's very good that our John Doe co-plaintiff in our lawsuit challenging the sanctions can privately send money to support the defense of Ukraine without immediately drawing the scrutiny of the Russian intelligence services. So if we don't want to just ban legitimate privacy uses of the tech, what do? Can we pre-screen legitimate uses and filter out the bad ones? Does that kind of prior restraint scale to the scope of all the things people do on the internet every day? Is it fair? Is it constitutional? Who decides which uses of the privacy tool are good and which are forbidden? And so, Tornado Cash matters because it brings all these questions into clear focus. It demands that we consider a balance between privacy and security, and it demands that we be realistic about our efforts to force the movement of open source technologies into one or the other direction. At the limit, that attempt to control technology is an attempt to control speech and ideas themselves. And finally, there's one other reason Tornado Cash matters. Because even if we disagree about privacy and security and where to strike the balance that we'd like to see in the world, and even if we disagree about how many eggs we'd be willing to crack in order to get to that world, there's also a procedural and a rule of law question in the Tornado Cash context. And the question is, who should decide, who should craft this policy in our system, in our American system? Is it the courts? Is it the president? Is it Congress? And even more fundamentally, is this already the policy so that all we need to do is enforce the law against violators, like Roman Storm in the Southern District of New York? Was that policy made clear before Roman was arrested? I didn't get to this in my parable because I think a digression about building codes in Clearville and whether Shade was supposed to be a licensed contractor before he started selling curtains would have been insufferable, especially in rhyming couplets. And so we'll just have to look at the actual facts of Tornado Cash to make this argument. So briefly, one, FinCEN has had guidance for years that said that the person who doesn't have total independent control over user funds is not a money transmitter. That anonymizing software providers, and that is a quote, are not money transmitters. And finally, the regulations have said for longer than that guidance, that you are a money transmitter only if you accept and transmit. Now, a pretty plain statutory interpretation of that regulation is that the thing you do in between accepting and transmitting is called controlling the money. And so I would say someone who doesn't have control of the money isn't obligated to register with FinCEN. Now, however, the DOJ is arguing, and Judge Fela has agreed in her oral ruling, that the definition of unlicensed money transmission in the criminal statutes 18 U.S.C. 1960 is not linked to the definition of money transmission for which FinCEN offers guidance. She said that the guidance developers have relied upon is not relevant. I see a glaring rule of law problem there, and lately I feel like I'm losing my mind that it's not more obvious to others. To me, no one should ever be charged with failure to get a license from a regulator who said they didn't need a license in the first place. So even if you think that systems like Tornado Cash should be a money transmitter, should be licensed, we should first make that clear in the law before arresting people for violating it. Similarly, the plain text of IEPA, our sanctions laws, says that OFAC can sanction foreign persons and the property in which foreign persons have an interest. There is exactly zero way that any foreign person has any property interest in a donation made to Coin Center processed via the immutable Tornado Cash smart contracts. And yet, if any of you were to donate to Coin Center today through Tornado Cash, we would be obligated to block and freeze that donation, and you would have committed a felony. So the rule of law problem, simply stated, is this: can we criminalize behaviors that are essentially new under existing laws, or do we need to draft new laws and ensure that people know and understand those new laws before expecting them to comply with them? And if you'd like to donate to Coin Center, you can do it right here. In conclusion, I should leave this up longer, shouldn't I? This damn slide clicker. In conclusion, I don't want to live in Clearville. I don't think you can force me to live in Clearville if I've not committed other crimes. And I don't think you can arrest people who give me tools for privacy in my entirely legal day-to-day affairs merely because someone else who got the benefit of that privacy wanted to break the law. And even if I have to live in Clearville, and I do believe we live in a society, so if we all vote to live in Clearville, I guess I'll live in Clearville, I would at least expect the dignity of there being a public debate amongst my elected officials, a vote in Congress, and a signature from the president before they pull down my curtains and stare through my walls. Simply claiming that existing laws already lets them do that is the opposite of law and order. So thank you for listening to my story, and I hope we have a robust discussion with little miscommunication today.